He says immigrants are important to the US economy. But listen to how he defended his position. This is Joe Biden, I'm quoting. Why is China stalling so badly economically? Why is Japan having trouble? Why is Russia? Why is India? Because they're xenophobic. They don't want immigrants. Immigrants are what makes us strong. A lot to unpack here. First, the political blunder. Japan is probably America's most important ally in Asia. India is not an ally, but a partner, and a very important one at that. Washington has invested a lot in its relationship with New Delhi, yet what does Joe Biden do? Call both of them xenophobic in one sentence. Talk about a political masterstroke. Secondly, does Biden's theory make sense? In his country, perhaps it does. America's population has aged in the last decades. Many of them have left the workforce, so immigrants have plugged the gap. Let me show you some data. In 1996, immigrants made up less than 12% of the US workforce, and now more than 18%. It's a record high. There are more than 29 million foreign-born workers in the US, and what sort of work do they do? Everything, from management to services to construction. In fact, the US is often called the land of immigrants. So Biden is right about his country. But he made a crucial mistake. A mistake that lots of US politicians make. He thought America is the world. What's true in the US is true everywhere. That was his assumption, except it's not. Let's look at the three issues that Biden raised: need for immigrant workers, economic slowdown, and xenophobia. India's economy and demography are very different from the US. In India, 68% of the population is working age. It's much lower in the US. Only 59% native-born Americans are of working age. So India's problem is the opposite. We do not need foreign workers. We already have a large and young workforce. What we need is jobs for them. Which brings us to the second issue. What economic trouble is Joe Biden talking about? India's GDP grew by 8.4% in the third quarter of the last financial year. It's the fastest growing major economy in the world. Projections for the future also look good. The IMF is expecting India to grow by 6.5% in this financial year. That's 2024 to 2025. But now it has raised its projection from 6.5% to 6.8%. Compare this to other Asian economies. China is projected to grow by 4.6%. Japan could grow by 0.9%. And South Korea 2.3%. Now don't get us wrong. India's economy faces a number of challenges. We need more reforms. We need more jobs and more investments. But immigration does not figure on anyone's list. And finally, the third issue, xenophobia. Indians have traditionally welcomed outsiders. It has been a cultural strong suit. And that continues even today. India is home to around 5.2 million immigrants. They make up the 12th largest immigrant population in the world. And where did these people come from? Mostly the neighborhood, like Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. Some came in search of jobs, others escaped persecution. Yet Biden says India is xenophobic. We don't expect much nuance from the US president. After all, he's in election mode right now. So winning is his biggest priority. But he should be mindful of the consequences. We saw another goof up last month. Biden claimed that his uncle was eaten by cannibals in Papua New Guinea. Again, Papua New Guinea is a US ally. Their prime minister hit back at Biden's remarks. Listen to what he said. President Biden's remarks may have been a slip of the tongue. However, my country does not deserve to be labeled as cannibals. Do you see the problem? Biden may drop a statement and move on, but what he says has consequences. You can't just call your partner xenophobic, that too fellow democracies. His advisors better get a grip on the president's loose cannon statements. If not, one of these days, he could trigger a diplomatic storm. Meanwhile, in Saudi Arabia, the US seems to be making some headway. This is about the conflict in Gaza. Washington is hoping to get some help from Riyadh. In return, they've offered some incentives. It's an old proposal that they're looking to revive. A defense agreement. The deal will be between the US and Saudi Arabia. It may lead to normalization of ties between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Like I said, an old proposal. The negotiations started last year. But when Hamas attacked Israel in October, the talks were put on hold. Then in January this year, the US and Saudi Arabia resumed discussions. They were making decent progress, but now there seems to be a sense of urgency. The US wants to seal the deal as soon as possible, and Saudi Arabia is on board. Their foreign minister spoke about it earlier this week. He said they are, quote unquote, very close to a deal. And what is this deal? The Saudi kingdom will get US military protection. In return, Saudi Arabia will engage with Israel and take steps towards normalization. That is a broad outline. It may sound like a simple deal, but it's fraught with complications. For starters, Riyadh has a long wish list, both for Biden and Netanyahu. They want three things from America. Number one, advanced military weapons. Number two, American investments in high-tech spaces like artificial intelligence and quantum computing. And number three, nuclear technology. US help in developing a Saudi civilian nuclear program. That's what Riyadh wants. Washington finds these requests reasonable, so they'll most likely be accepted. The challenge comes with Israel. Saudi Arabia always had some demands from Israel, but now, after the destruction in Gaza, the Saudis have raised the bar. This is their precondition for normalization. End the war in Gaza and spell out a path for Palestinian statehood. This is what Netanyahu must do. Saudi Arabia says it won't settle for anything less than this.
I think on the bilateral agreements between the Kingdom and the US, we are very, very close. Most of the work has already been done. We have the broad outlines of what we think needs to happen on the Palestinian front. Obviously, from our perspective, when we've coordinated this closely with the Palestinians, it needs to be truly a pathway to a Palestinian state.
So the question now is, will Netanyahu agree? There's a good chance he may not, and I'll tell you why. 3 months back, he met Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State. Blinken shared the Saudi proposal with Netanyahu, including the demand for Palestinian statehood. And Netanyahu rejected it, apparently instantly. There is little to suggest that he's had a change of heart since. Even if he wants to, his coalition partners won't let him. They will bring his government down. He depends on some hardliners to remain in power. One of them said a separate Palestinian state would, quote unquote, lead to a Holocaust. That should tell you about their extreme position. Prime Minister Netanyahu won't risk his chair for Saudi normalization unless he's forced to. Can the US and Saudi Arabia do that? Apparently they plan to. Reports say they will give Netanyahu two options. Option one, join the US-Saudi deal, get a new powerful diplomatic ally and substantial investment commitments. Option two, sit out of the deal, lose allies and benefits. It's not really a choice. It's my way or the highway. Irrespective of Netanyahu's response, the US and Saudi Arabia are prepared to strike a deal, and this will have repercussions for both regional and global players, including China. Reports say when this agreement with America is signed, Saudi Arabia may curtail Chinese investments, especially in strategic areas like technology and mobile networks. So the US stands a lot to gain. The deal could restore America's position as a net security provider in the region. More importantly, recover America's waning influence in West Asia. But this leverage would be meaningless if it fails to end the war in Gaza. Speaking of which, it's day 209 of the Gaza war. Israel is all set to attack Rafah, the southernmost city on the Gaza Strip. Israel wants to destroy Hamas commanders there. But here's the catch. Rafah is currently home to 1.4 million Palestinians. That's more than half of Gaza's population. They're all in Rafah. Where will these people go? They have two options, and both are bad. One, move north and face more Israeli strikes. Two, move further south and exit the Gaza Strip through this crossing. It's called the Rafah crossing. It's the southernmost exit point from Gaza. It borders Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. So from here, you can leave Gaza and enter Egypt. Now, Gaza has a total of 7 crossings or exit points. Right now, Rafah is the only one that's open, and aid goes in through it, and Palestinians leave through it, the Rafah crossing. And for this, for leaving, they pay a hefty price. around $5,000 per adult and $2,500 per child. That's what you have to pay to leave Gaza. It's a lot of money for anyone, even more for someone who is escaping a war. And who is charging this money? An Egyptian firm. This is what a report says. A firm called Hala Consulting and Tourism Services, owned by an influential Egyptian businessman, who also happens to be an ally of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the Egyptian president. This firm first started its services in February. Before that, there were a lot of intermediaries helping people leave Gaza, and they too were charging a lot of money, close to $11,000 per adult. That's what they were charging. Now, this firm was brought in to standardize the rates. Its first so-called VIP service was in February this year, and now they have a monopoly over it. Anyone who wants to leave Gaza and enter Egypt must do so through this firm. Needless to say, their profits have skyrocketed. $21 million in February, $39 million in March, and $58 million in the month of April. So last month, the company is said to have earned an average of $2 million a day. At this rate, they'll earn close to $500 million by the end of this year. We can only hope that the war ends before that. Before the war, Hala charged people $350 to leave Gaza. Now they charge $5,000. That's a 14-fold increase. Cairo was asked about this profiteering, about companies making money off the misery of Gazans. It has rubbished all such reports. But there's no denying that the war economy is booming, and this Egyptian firm is not the only one benefiting. There are others smuggling humanitarian aid. Tons of aid is being sent into Gaza from all over the world. It is meant for the people trapped in the war zone. It's meant for ordinary citizens. But a lot of this aid is being smuggled. The most popular goods are said to be chicken and chocolates. One unit of chicken is being sold for $18. Sometimes it goes up to $22. Then there are chocolates. The packet says humanitarian aid, but it's still being sold on the black market. These markets are controlled by Palestinian gangs. They use muscle power. They offer warehouses to NGOs and protection to aid trucks. In exchange, they siphon off the aid. Some even steal from homes. Thousands of Gazans have left their homes, so these gangs ransack them. They steal appliances and furniture and sell them in the black market. In fact, this is the story of every conflict zone. Refugees and those fleeing conflicts are exploited. You may remember the Afghan refugees leaving Pakistan. They were charged $830 in exit fees. So they were thrown out of Pakistan, and they were also made to pay for it. $830 per person. Yemen imposes tariffs on commercial goods. It helps fund the Houthis while the people suffer crushing poverty. So it's the same everywhere across the globe. Conflicts lead to instability, people try to escape it, and some groups and companies make money off their desperation. Now to news from the other war, the war in Ukraine. There have been some new developments there. The US has made new allegations against Russia. Washington says Moscow is using chemical weapons, specifically a choking agent called chloropicrin. This is a banned substance, but the US says Russia is using it for quote-unquote battlefield gains. They launched the chemical into fortified positions, basically Ukrainian strongholds. They're attacked with the chemical. It causes irritation to the eyes, lungs and skin. Affected soldiers may get nauseous and vomit. So it becomes easier for an attacking force to capture this stronghold. The US says Russia is doing this, using chemical weapons like the banned chloropicrin. Russia, of course, denies all this. The Kremlin has called the allegations baseless. Washington will share its findings with the OPCW, the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW. This is the body that enforces the global chemical weapons ban, and Russia is one of the member states. So officially, Moscow has to obey the organization's rules. But they will need concrete proof that Russia violated the ban. And we'll have to wait till they come out with their own assessment. But the US is not waiting. It has decided to act. It has imposed new sanctions on Russia. This latest round targets about 300 entities, including people and companies linked to Russia's chemical weapons program. And that's not all. The US has also taken a shot at China, at Chinese companies that help Russia evade sanctions. About 20 Chinese firms have been targeted by America, plus sanctions have been imposed on others. Firms based in Azerbaijan, Turkey, the UAE, Slovakia and Belgium, all accused of helping Russia evade sanctions. So the US is trying to stop the leaks. But will it work? Will this finally slow Moscow down? Because Russia shows no signs of stopping for anything. They've been relentless in their assault. They're making inroads, pushing back the Ukrainian forces. The next target is Chasiv Yar, located in eastern Ukraine near the city of Bakhmut.
They suffer big losses. Our troops kill a lot of them. But I have to emphasize that the enemy has a lot of UAVs that significantly impact the situation here. I hope we receive artillery shells soon. This can really change the situation.
The Ukrainians are waiting for Western weapons. The supplies had dried up for a while because the US Congress was too busy playing politics. In the meantime, Russia took advantage of the situation and pushed further into Ukrainian territory. They now have Chasiv Yar surrounded. And reports say they want the city to fall soon, by next week, in time for Russia's Victory Day celebrations on the 9th of May. That's when Russia celebrates its victory over Germany during Second World War. Moscow wants to announce the fall of Chasiv Yar on the same day. But this small city is not Russia's only target. Moscow is also attacking Odessa, a port city on the Black Sea. It has been hit 3 times this week, on 3 consecutive days. On Monday, a Russian missile struck an educational institution in Odessa. 4 people were killed, 28 others were injured. There was another attack on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, a missile hit a postal depot in Odessa. Ukraine released footage of the area in flames. They say 8 people have been killed this week alone. So Odessa has been a constant target since the war began. Odessa's port makes it invaluable to Ukraine. So Russia has often tried to damage the city's port infrastructure, but frankly, Odessa is a distraction. It's about hurting Ukraine, not gaining any real advantage. The advantage lies to the north, in Chasiv Yar. That seems to be where the next phase of the Ukraine war will play out. From a real war zone, let's turn to a mini war zone. That's US colleges. Things have gotten worse since yesterday. The new flashpoint is UCLA, the University of California. Protesting students had organized a sit-in there. They pitched tents on campus grounds, held up placards and refused to leave, a lot like New York's Columbia University. And the reaction was the same. A crackdown by local police officers. Take a look at this. How about that? Flashbangs inside a college campus. UCLA had issued an alert before police action, so some students had left the campus. Those who remained were arrested. You can debate the tactics used by the cops, but honestly, they seem to have had little choice. This week, 2 rival protest groups had clashed at UCLA, pro-Palestine and pro-Israel groups. A lot of students were injured. Some of them had to be hospitalized, so the authorities could not stand by and watch. They had to intervene. Having said that, this police action is a temporary fix. It will not address the root issue, the issue of distrust between pro-Palestine and pro-Israel protesters. Listen to this student at UCLA.
The life-threatening assault we faced last night is nothing less than a horrifying, despicable act of terror. For over 7 hours, Zionist aggressors hurled gas canisters, sprayed pepper spray, and threw fireworks and bricks into our encampment. They broke our barriers repeatedly, clearly in an attempt to kill our community.
Notice the words used. Act of terror, Zionist aggressors, an attempt to kill. None of this suggests an imminent de-escalation. So what's the way forward? Well, this is where leadership is important. Politicians can make or break such moments, but can US politicians rise to the challenge? Let's look at both the camps. President Joe Biden was not saying much. He gave a statement last month, when the protest broke out. He said both sides have a point, both the pro-Israel and the pro-Palestine camps. And that statement was on April 22nd. After that, there's been silence. He spoke about semiconductors, he cracked jokes at the White House dinner, and he called his allies xenophobic, but no comment on the college protests. Until a short while back, Biden delivered an emergency address on the situation. He said peaceful protest is allowed, but violent protests are not. Listen in.
In moments like this, there are always those who rush in to score political points. But this isn't a moment for politics. It's a moment for clarity. So let me be clear. Peaceful protest in America. Violent protest is not protected. Peaceful protest is. It's against the law when violence occurs. Destroying property is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law. Vandalism, trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes and graduations. None of this is a peaceful protest.
Biden is trying to balance things out. No such problem on the other side, though. The Republicans are against the protesting students. They've passed a bill in the U.S. House. It aims to limit anti-Semitism in U.S. colleges. But critics say it does a lot more, that it could muzzle criticism of Israel as well. And Donald Trump is loving all of this. He's pitched himself as the law and order president. So this is right down his alley. Listen to how Trump described the crackdown in New York.
They went into one of the big buildings, a beautiful landmark building. Boy, they got the hell beat out of it last night. You know, you're supposed to take care of those buildings. It took a beating. But the police came in, and in exactly 2 hours, everything was over. It was a beautiful thing to watch. New York's finest.
That's Donald Trump for you. He says the crackdown was beautiful. But how will these college protests affect U.S. politics, especially in an election year? It all depends on young voters. These protesters won't be voting for Trump, but they may decide to simply boycott, to not turn up at all, and that could hurt Joe Biden. He trails Trump by 1.5 points at the national level, but among the youth, Biden leads. He is 8 points ahead of Trump. So the young voter is key for Joe Biden. Just one problem, though. That lead is shrinking. In 2020, Biden had a 23-point lead over Trump among young Americans. Like I said, it's now down to 8. A lot of young Americans have abandoned Biden's camp mainly because of Israel. They accuse Biden of supporting a genocide in Gaza. And that could cost Biden swing states like Wisconsin and Michigan. Secondly, these pictures are a welcome break for Trump. The US media was obsessed with his criminal trial. They were covering every word of it. But now the focus has changed. Everyone's talking about the college protests in America, about how the country is divided, and that plays into Trump's hand. The only advantage for Biden is time. Elections are only in November this year, so Biden has time to win back these voters. Whether it's by ending the war in Gaza or increasing aid to Palestinians or making Israel agree to some concessions. But whatever happens, one thing is pretty clear. America is more divided than ever before. Both Trump and Biden can share the blame for that. Vantage continues after a short break.
अगर आप पहले 2 फेजेस को देखें और इसकी चर्चा काफी चल रही है कि वोटर टर्नआउट थोड़ा लो रहा है, कुछ स्टेट्स में 5-6% भी नीचे रहा है वोटर टर्नआउट, तो 400 पार का आपका नारा है, 370 भारतीय जनता पार्टी, तो क्या गाड़ी पटरी पे है? कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं कि कुछ रेल
पटरी पे है जी। आप परिणाम के दिन देख लेना, 12:30 बजे के पहले एनडीए 400 पार कर जाएगी, मोदी जी फिर से प्रधानमंत्री होंगे। जो लोअर टर्नआउट है इसके बहुत सारे कारण हैं। 12 साल के बाद मतदाता सूची का शुद्धिकरण हुआ है, एक। दूसरा कारण है कि सामने से कोई लड़ाई ही नहीं है, जिसके कारण टर्नआउट पर एक प्रकार से इफेक्ट होता है। मगर हमारी पार्टी की टीम ने, मैंने स्वयं बहुत डिटेल एनालिसिस किया है। हम 2 चरण में 100 पार कर 100 से भी कई अधिक सीटें जीत के साथ आगे बढ़ रहे हैं तीसरे चरण में। तो मुझे 400 पार के लक्ष्य में कोई दिक्कत नहीं दिखाई पड़ती।
महाराष्ट्र से आपको पूरी उम्मीद है कि 41 से
पक्का हम, देखिए आंकड़ा 41 का 40 हो जाए या 42 हो जाए, कमोबेश यही परिणाम रहेगा। महाराष्ट्र, मध्य प्रदेश, उत्तराखंड, जम्मू कश्मीर, दिल्ली, गुजरात, कर्नाटक हम 100% रिपीट करेंगे। उत्तर प्रदेश हम 5 से 7 सीट की बढ़ोतरी करेंगे। ओडिशा हम 16 के आसपास जा सकते हैं और 16 और आसाम में भी 12 के ऊपर चले जाएंगे, 12 भी हो सकती है। बंगाल हम कम से कम 30 सीट जीतेंगे।
Okay, we have two reporters with us to bring us much more in terms of context on this entire story. Our colleague Aman Sharma joining us live, our colleague Pallavi Ghosh joining us live to bring us far more in terms of perspective on this story. Both of them right now touring across the country. Let's go over to Aman Sharma first to understand more. Aman, the Home Minister making this declaration charge saw par be on 12:30 p.m. Aman, just tell our audiences, what are the...
Our next story is about Boeing. Another Boeing-linked whistleblower has died, a man named Joshua Dean. The death was due to a sudden infection. Dean had flagged safety concerns in Boeing planes. He'd also talked about alleged misconduct. He was fired from the company in 2023 and now the man is dead. This is the second Boeing whistleblower to die in just 2 months. The last one died by suicide. This time it's infection. So it's definitely raising some questions. Is someone behind these deaths? Our next report tells you.
Meet Joshua Dean. He was 45 years old. He lived in Kansas. Until 2 weeks ago, Dean was in good health, but one day he suddenly developed breathing troubles. Dean tested positive for influenza B and MRSA. It's a bacterial infection that's incredibly hard to treat. Soon he developed pneumonia. He was put on life support, and in just 2 weeks, Dean died. Dean's death was suspicious. Why? Because of where he used to work. Dean was a former quality auditor at Boeing's supplier Spirit Aerosystems. It's a company that grew out of Boeing in 2005. Dean worked there since 2019. In 2021, he raised some concerns. He said the bulkhead holes in some 737 MAX planes were not drilled properly. Dean says he reported the problem to several managers, but it was hidden by them. Workers were instructed to downplay the defects. In 2023, it became public knowledge after Dean and several workers gave testimonies. Soon, Dean was fired. He filed a case against Boeing, and he said he was being made a scapegoat. But Dean isn't the only Boeing whistleblower to die suddenly. Less than 2 months ago, another Boeing whistleblower was found dead, a man named John Barnett. He apparently shot himself. Barnett worked for Boeing for over 30 years. He revealed details about substandard parts, problems with Boeing's oxygen systems. Barnett too had alerted his managers, but nothing was done. Boeing even denied his accusations. Now 2 whistleblowers dead in just 2 months, both associated with Boeing. This only adds to the company's mounting troubles. In the last decade, Boeing has faced major turbulence. There have been 2 fatal crashes, mechanical issues, a door blowing out mid-flight, failed audits, Senate scrutiny, and serious questions about the safety of the aircraft. The last thing Boeing needs is this, but the company can't seem to escape controversy. It's become the problem child of the aviation world.
Passengers shouldn't have to rely on whistleblowers to provide the truth. They should be able to get on airplanes and not have to worry about what model it is, whether it was designed and manufactured to the highest of standards, whether the airline is operating and maintaining it properly, or whether government agencies are providing proper oversight.
In the world of aviation, Boeing has long been synonymous with innovation, reliability, and for decades, their planes have connected continents and has shaped the way we travel. But behind those soaring wings now lies a company shrouded in mismanagement, controversy, and tragedy.
Every Indian election has a few ingredients. Appeals to caste, appeals to religion, some high-octane campaigning, and finally, Pakistan. Talk about a strange obsession. On foreign policy, India has moved beyond Pakistan. There is more focus elsewhere, like on China and Southeast Asia. But in election season, Pakistan makes a comeback. Same case this time. It all started with this social media post by former Pakistan Minister Fawad Chaudhry. You may remember him and his time in office. He was a loose cannon in Imran Khan's cabinet. He gave a headline almost every day. This time, he's written about Congress leader Rahul Gandhi. He reposted one of his speeches and he wrote Rahul on fire. Sure enough, this has triggered a political showdown in India. Today, Prime Minister Narendra Modi talked about it. He said Pakistan wants Rahul Gandhi to be Prime Minister.
मजा ये है कि यहां कांग्रेस मर रही है और वहां पाकिस्तान रो रहा है। आपको पता चला होगा कांग्रेस के लिए अब पाकिस्तानी नेता दुआ कर रहे हैं शहजादे को प्रधानमंत्री बनाने के लिए पाकिस्तान उतावला है।
It's about political mileage. Pakistan and India are long-time rivals, so praise from a Pakistani leader is not ideal. Voters see it as praise from the enemy. So the Congress party is hit back. They say Fawad Chaudhry is under pressure. From whom? Apparently the Sharifs. Listen to this.
जो बयान आया है वो नवाज शरीफ उनके भाई की गवर्नमेंट के दबाव में आया है। प्रधानमंत्री के नवाज शरीफ के साथ बहुत अच्छे रिश्ते हैं और इसीलिए ये बयान आया है ताकि इस बयान को हमारे प्रधानमंत्री एक्सप्लॉइट करने की कोशिश कर सके।
I'm afraid none of it makes sense. Pakistan struggled to rig their own elections this year. So them influencing India is out of the question. But forget the rhetoric. This controversy does raise a bigger question. What role does Pakistan play in India's general elections? In the past, a big one. For many decades, Pakistan was India's biggest strategic threat. We fought 3 wars. We had a nuclear arms race, so politicians talked a lot about Pakistan, about how they would address this problematic neighbor. Let me show you the BJP's manifesto from 1999. This was right after the Kargil war, so the introduction is Pakistan heavy. The BJP promised to defend India and its armed forces. In 2004, the tone changed. The war was behind both countries. Peace was on the government's agenda, so the 2004 manifesto promised more dialogue with Pakistan. In 2014, Prime Minister Modi entered the picture. He said terror and talks cannot go hand in hand. In 2019, the BJP manifesto barely talked about Pakistan, just a reference to refugees from erstwhile East Pakistan, nothing more. But Pakistani terrorism remained a major issue. The Pulwama attacks had happened in February that year. So national security dominated conversations, which brings us to 2024. The BJP's manifesto mentions Pakistan just once. A promise to build infrastructure along the Indo-Pakistan border. That's it. It tells you how the conversation has changed. What about the Congress party? Same thing. In 2014, the Congress promised to improve relations and at the same time to tackle terrorism. But this time, there is barely a mention. The Congress party says engagement will depend on what Pakistan does. If they stop terrorism, things could improve. If not, do not expect much. So basically, both parties are saying the same thing. It's a sign of how India's policy has changed. Earlier, Pakistan was an existential question for India. Now, it's barely a footnote. Has it also changed on the other side? Not from the looks of it. Pakistan's election campaign featured India a lot. Imran Khan talked about India's foreign policy. Nawaz Sharif promised a reset. So their India obsession is very much alive. And we saw an example of that today. Pakistan's Army Chief Asim Munir addressed cadets of their Air Force. He called India his arch rival. Listen to this.
The professionalism and brilliance of Pakistan Air Force has been clearly displayed in wars against our arch rival and profoundly in February 2019 in a short but seminal engagement against the misplaced calculus of our rival. Silence of the world over Kashmir is deafening, but we will continue to extend moral, political and diplomatic support to the people of Kashmir till the day they are empowered to exercise their right of self-determination.
Sums up the situation. Indian political discourse has moved beyond Pakistan. This election won't change that. You may hear rhetoric about sympathizing with Pakistan or being supported by Islamabad, but the fact is most Indian parties have moved on. So it doesn't matter who wins in June. India's Pakistan policy is locked in. Our next story is from Africa, from Ghana in the West. Yesterday was a big day for many in the country. Some of their long-lost treasures came home. 32 artifacts are back in Ghana, gold relics that once belonged to royalty. They're considered crown jewels. Most were looted about 150 years ago by British colonizers. 2 museums in the UK have had them for years. No surprise that one of them was a British museum. So for 150 years, the people of Ghana could not see their own heritage. Their crown jewels were held in London. It's something Indians understand all too well. Ghana is lucky though. Its artifacts are finally back home. But there's a catch. This is a loan. The museums are not permanently returning the treasures. They've only sent them to Ghana for 3 years. Here's our report.
We are displaying this for you to see that the items that were stolen, looted in 1874, not all of them has returned, but that what we have here still embodies the soul of Ashanti. And I believe within the period that they are being displayed here, you make an effort, everybody, to come and visit, to see it yourselves.
That was the traditional king of the Ashanti people. His ancestors once ruled over most of Ghana. A majority of Ghana's people hail from his community. He is a ceremonial figurehead, and he has done Ghana a great service. He struck a deal with 2 museums in the UK and brought home some of his community's ancient treasures. What you're seeing are the Ashanti crown jewels. It includes the sword of the state, gold badges, royal rings and neck pieces. These items once belonged to the Ashanti king's family and retainers. Now they are back in Ghana.
These treasures, once looted by British forces in 1874, have rightfully found their way back to the Mancha Palace Museum through a collaborative effort between our institutions.
They are at a museum in the king's hometown, at the Manyia Palace Museum in the city of Kumasi. It is open to the people of Ghana. Now they can take a trip by road or rail to see their heritage, instead of having to travel overseas to their old colonizers' nation. The British looted most of these artifacts in 1874, during the Third Anglo-Ashanti War. British troops razed the Ashanti Royal Palace and looted priceless artifacts during its destruction. They took these treasures back to the UK, and eventually they found their way to museums. The museums have refused to return any of the loot though. Places like the British Museum stubbornly hold on to all their stolen artifacts. Let's face it, if they didn't, the museum would be an empty husk, much like what the British Empire is today. So normally museums in the UK refuse to give back any artifacts, but this time they made an exception.
We at the British Museum are wholly committed to continuing this relationship, building on this loan in a manner based on friendship, trust, mutual respect and a willingness to discuss.
They agreed to loan the golden treasures to the Ashanti monarch, not to Ghana, just to the monarch. The king of the Ashanti people celebrates 25 years on the throne this year. The artifact loan is part of that celebration. The artifacts will be in Ghana for 3 years, but after that, Britain might want them back. The people of Ghana should go and see these treasures while they can. Who knows if the British will ever do the right thing again. But if this is a change of heart, a real wish to make amends, then other countries should take note. Benin is missing some bronzes, Greece is missing some marbles, and India, well, we would like our Kohinoor back. That is another crown jewel that should make its way back home.
What does it take to become a government spokesperson? If you're in Ukraine, you don't even have to be human. Welcome to the future. We would like you to meet Victoria.
Шановні представники ЗМІ та громадськості, вітаю вас.
My name is Victoria Shi. I was created by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine with the use of AI technology in order to quickly and efficiently inform you about consular issues. I'm a digital person, meaning the text you hear has not been read by a real person. Artificial intelligence did it.
Не зачитувала реальна людина.
She overclarified herself already, but let's explain. This is Ukraine's first digital spokesperson. She looks human. Her likeness is based on a Ukrainian singer. She gesticulates with her hands and moves her head while speaking, so she seems almost real. But she's been created by artificial intelligence. Her image is AI generated. What she says will be written by humans. So hopefully she won't hallucinate during a press conference and turn into a viral TikTok. But that aside, what is her purpose? Victoria will make official statements on behalf of the Foreign Ministry of Ukraine. The government says this will save them time and resources, and some people can apparently relate to this sentiment, like British singer FKA Twigs. She's orchestrating the future as well. Several artists have repeatedly complained about AI, about how it is being used to steal their likeness and exploit their identity and livelihood. Now, FKA Twigs is changing the game.
As a future-facing artist, new technologies are an exciting tool that can be used to express deeper emotions, create fantasy worlds, and touch the hearts of many people.
So Twigs is creating a deep fake of herself. This will be an AI-generated image. It will look like the singer. It will be trained in her personality. It will have her voice and tone of speaking. And Twigs will use this deep fake for public interaction, mostly with fans and journalists, so she can focus on her music. Basically, Twigs has outsourced socializing. She will be a legend among introverts. Now, both the examples are completely different. The first comes from a government, the second from an artist, but both have one thing in common. Humans are delegating work to AI avatars. Is this what the future looks like? You see, AI has become part of the fabric of modern life. AI is writing essays, powering your toothbrush and helping you snore lesser. If you landed on Vantage after a Google search, it is thanks to AI, so it is still very exciting. AI can be so good at things, many fear it is going to snag their jobs. But experts are not too worried. They say that AI may never replace humans if we learn to do one thing: master the art of delegation. Simply put, this means figuring out what we need to do ourselves and what is best left to machines. We need to delegate tasks to AI to stay ahead of the curve. After all, AI is already brilliant at that as well. AI is delegating tasks to humans like a pro, but worry not, humans are catching up. A K-pop star has a digital twin that is never too busy to talk to fans. Influencers will soon join the club. India, China, Greece, Kuwait and Taiwan have lifelike AI anchors. The mayor of Big Apple does not have his own avatar yet, but he's using AI to make robot phone calls. The voice deepfake has the mayor's voice and tone, and now New Yorkers are confused about why Eric Adams is talking to them in Mandarin and Yiddish. It sounds incredibly funny, but there are ethical concerns here. How identical is too identical? This raises questions about copyright and ownership. Also, when is it appropriate for you to use AI? Can employees use AI avatars for office meetings? Can you send an AI avatar to your own court hearing? That doesn't sound right, but if it were possible, Donald Trump would be doing it. Also, should governments be using AI? Should influencers? After all, public figures have an unsaid responsibility. They need to interact with the public. Remove that, and you'll be an influencer talking to a brick. But worst of all, what if something goes wrong? What are the consequences? And who takes the responsibility? There are way too many questions, not enough answers. The fact is, AI is just a tool, and an imperfect one at that. It is not human, it lacks judgment, it lacks a moral code, it has limitations. So delegating to AI will make tasks simpler, but you must know its capabilities, identify the boundaries, and take responsibility. Once that is clear, maybe an AI avatar can cancel plans on your behalf or laugh at your bad jokes. The opportunities seem endless, but first we must figure out where the boundary lies. Our last story tonight comes from Kenya. Since March, devastating floods have killed hundreds of people there and displaced tens of thousands more. Homes, roads, bridges have all been destroyed and the situation does not seem to be improving. Yesterday, a river broke its bank and overflowed into Masai Mara. It is one of Africa's greatest wildlife national reserves. Now, many parts of the reserve are inundated. About 90 people have been rescued so far, but it's not clear how many are still trapped. Here's a report.
On Wednesday, amid torrential rainfall, Kenya's Talek River broke its banks. It overflowed into Masai Mara, one of Africa's most popular wildlife reserves. Now parts of the reserve are inundated. Masai Mara is a tourist hotspot in Kenya, and many of its camps have been flooded. So far, 90 tourists and staff have been evacuated. It's unclear how many people remain in the reserve, but there are fears that animals have been swept away. This raging flood has only added to Kenya's woes. Its rainy season started in mid-March. Since then, torrential rainfall has caused flooding and landslides. At least 188 people have been killed. At least 30,000 more have been displaced.
My wife and I were asleep and so were the children. My wife abruptly woke up after she heard a loud bang. She got out of the bed and rushed to go and find out what was happening. So I followed her. The raging water came from behind the house. It sounded like a bomb. Immediately, the water swept us away. I regained consciousness in the morning, naked and on top of an uprooted tree log.
Homes, bridges and roads are all destroyed. There is heavy damage to other key economic resources as well, including crops and livestock. People who lived off small businesses like avocado farms have lost their livelihoods. On Tuesday, President William Ruto amped up his efforts. He ordered the military to join the rescue operations.
In Nairobi and all over the country, we do not want to keep losing the lives of our citizens. We will put in place adequate plans to feed them, shelter them, and provide all the necessary requirements. We decided this in cabinet today, and the government will work with development partners on this undertaking.
But local people say rescue efforts have been slow. Many have lost their homes and they have nowhere to go. So some people are climbing atop trees. Today, a man was rescued after being stranded in a tree for 5 days. Locals also say they lack equipment to dig through the debris and look for bodies.
We have been searching with our bare hands unsuccessfully, but the smell concentrated around here makes us believe that she may be buried underneath here somewhere.
We are asking for help from the government, any kind of help so that we may be able to find the bodies of our loved ones.
There's no relief in sight. According to the Meteorological Department, more rain is expected. So it looks like this deadly deluge is not being washed away anytime soon.
Vantage continues after a short break.
अगर आप पहले 2 फेजेस को देखें और इसकी चर्चा काफी चल रही है कि वोटर टर्नआउट थोड़ा लो रहा है, कुछ स्टेट्स में 5-6% भी नीचे रहा है वोटर टर्नआउट, तो 400 पार का आपका नारा है, 370 भारतीय जनता पार्टी, तो क्या गाड़ी पटरी पे है? कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं कि कुछ रेल पटरी से
पटरी पे है जी। आप परिणाम के दिन देख लेना, 12:30 बजे के पहले एनडीए 400 पार कर जाएगी, मोदी जी फिर से प्रधानमंत्री होंगे। जो लोअर टर्नआउट है इसके बहुत सारे कारण हैं। 12 साल के बाद मतदाता सूची का शुद्धिकरण हुआ है, एक। दूसरा कारण है कि सामने से कोई लड़ाई ही नहीं है, जिसके कारण टर्नआउट पर एक प्रकार से इफेक्ट होता है। मगर हमारी पार्टी की टीम ने, मैंने स्वयं बहुत डिटेल एनालिसिस किया है। हम 2 चरण में 100 पार कर 100 से भी कई अधिक सीटें जीत के साथ आगे बढ़ रहे हैं तीसरे चरण में। तो मुझे 400 पार के लक्ष्य में कोई दिक्कत नहीं दिखाई पड़ती।
महाराष्ट्र से आपको पूरी उम्मीद है कि 41 से
पक्का हम, देखिए आंकड़ा 41 का 40 हो जाए या 42 हो जाए, कमोबेश यही परिणाम रहेगा। महाराष्ट्र, मध्य प्रदेश, उत्तराखंड, जम्मू कश्मीर, दिल्ली, गुजरात, कर्नाटक हम 100% रिपीट करेंगे। उत्तर प्रदेश हम 5 से 7 सीट की बढ़ोतरी करेंगे। ओडिशा हम 16 के आसपास जा सकते हैं और 16 और आसाम में भी 12 के ऊपर चले जाएंगे, 12 भी हो सकती है। बंगाल हम कम से कम 30 सीट जीतेंगे।
Okay, we have two reporters with us to bring us much more in terms of context on this entire story. Our colleague Aman Sharma joining us live, our colleague Palki Sharma joining us live to bring us far more in terms of perspective on this story. Both of them right now touring across the country. Let's go over to Aman Sharma first to understand more. Aman, the Home Minister making this declaration charge saw
And now it's time for Vantage shots, images that tell the story. In Georgia, police and protesters clash over the controversial foreign agents bill. In Indonesia, a volcano eruption has destroyed nearby houses. And in Paris, chefs reveal over 500 recipes that will feed 15,000 athletes participating in the Olympics. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 2011, Osama bin Laden was killed in Pakistan. US Navy SEALs shot the Al-Qaeda founder in his compound in Abbottabad. The raid was approved by US President Barack Obama. Bin Laden's compound was just kilometers away from a Pakistani military academy. We are leaving you on that note. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
News 18 and Federal Bank Primetime Studio.
A very good evening, everyone. You're watching The Right Stand with me, Akanksha Swaroop. I'm bringing you a live broadcast from the CNN News 18 Federal Bank Primetime Studio. Now, in a few moments from now, the big interview of Union Home Minister Amit Shah with Network 18 Group Editor-in-Chief Mr. Rahul Joshi will be playing out. We have been bringing to you the big excerpts from this interview throughout the day. And the big talking points have been his sharp attack on Congress over constitution and minority quota. He has also mocked the Congress and its confusion over delay in declaring Raebareli and Amethi seats. But Union Home Minister has also reiterated 400 power for the NDA, which has been the biggest talking point of the explosive interview. BJP's top election strategist and Chanakya Home Minister Shah has exuded with confidence that 400 plus was very much still a reality. The opposition, of course, has been criticizing the Bharatiya Janata Party for not latching on to the slogan anymore. But Amit Shah has put all criticism to rest, as he once again mentioned the 400 plus would be a reality in this election. First up, let's also break down for you Home Minister's 400 par prediction in the big states. Why is he saying so? Because the Home Minister has said